African National Congress National Executive Committee has been focusing its attention on the Integrity Commission's reports. It's believed that on Saturday, former President Thabo Mbeki addressed the virtual engagement and raised concerns about a weakened Secretary General's office, which is occupied by Ace Magashule. Joining us for more on the story is former Gauteng Premier Ace Magashule. Mr. Shilowa, good evening and thank you so much for your time. I suppose the overwhelming message, especially coming through from the reporting that we've seen from the Sunday papers today, is that the meeting seemed to take a very strong stance on what the office of the Secretary General of the ANC should be, and certainly that it's not living up to expectations right now.
I think one should treat some of these reports with caution because they are inspired leaks by each of the factions in the hope that they're going to influence public opinion. But obviously, it is true that there would have been discussions, and there should have been discussions, regarding, firstly, the decisions that the top six are alleged to have taken regarding on the voting in Parliament, and then having the Treasurer General and the National Chairperson giving the line of march, and the SG later saying, well, you know, the officials is not a formal structure, and that therefore it couldn't make those discussions. So for those kind of things, there should really be discussion, there should be censure. Secondly, you would also know that, again, as part of trying to win public opinion in the run-up to this weekend's NEC, there would have been a lot of talk both from the side of, you know, those who are set to support President Zuma and Magashule, as well as those who support President Ramaphosa, all of them sniping at one another. But again, what is important is what they say in the meeting rather than what they say outside, because we have got really no influence on the outcome of the meeting.
Let's talk about this issue of the step-aside rule. Much has been said about it. Did it need to be as complicated as it has been over the last couple of years?
Well, what makes it complicated is that for as long as the ANC have not been consistent in applying the rules relating to people who have been charged with fraud and corruption, maladministration, where the ANC have taken some of them from provinces to national level, where some people may still be in the national list and being representative in parliament, even as they've also been charged. It makes people to be able to say, well, why are we now focusing on Ace when we have not dealt with others? But my view is that, look, they have the rule, they must implement it against everyone, not just Ace. But Ace cannot escape by simply saying, well, deal with others first, you know, because he is the SG. He could also have ensured that if there are other people that he thinks should have been dealt with, he should have raised that issue himself even before his issue became a public knowledge.
Of course, the other thing that has emerged over this past week is this criticism about the formation of an RET faction within the ANC that is seemingly also using the office of the Secretary General to advance its own agenda, which is counter-revolutionary, effectively, to the broader mandate of the ANC. We've heard the criticism, but going forward, do you think anything more is going to be done about those who are being perceived to be pushing this agenda?
I think the issue is not so much that they are pushing a different agenda. It should be that when it's term that they are seen as an organization within an organization with their own structures, obviously one needs to be able to deal with them. It's different from if it was said that, well, they support other formations which may or may not have people inside the ANC which are raising a similar issue. But when extent that they sit, say they have meeting, they've got structures across the length and breadth of the country, and then meet as ANC members, I think that, is something that needs to be dealt with. But again, there needs to be consistency in dealing with this issue. I think for me, what is concerning is that to an extent that Carl Nihas is in the SG's office, both the SG and Carl Nihas should really be saying to him, you can't be in my office and still be acting in this way, because whether it's true or not, people are going to perceive it as if you are just doing my own biddings, especially since he will also be there organizing people going to court when Ace appears and or when former President Zuma is appearing. So that brings the office into disrepute, and it's something which the ANC must deal with. If they don't, that formation inside the ANC may grow in the same way that the famous Gang of Eight in the ANC also grew while in exile. And I think at some point the ANC simply had to expel all of them.
Do you think it's likely that the Secretary General is going to be sanctioned for the comments that he made on radio station Gagasi FM? And this is about the vote that took place in Parliament regarding the motion of to investigate an inquiry into the public protector.
I think if the ANC want to still have credibility, at least among its own members, they will have to censure him. To an extent that they want to deal with it as a matter of disciplinary hearing, then obviously they can't discuss it in that NEC, because some of the people who may either be in the DC or who are likely to be called in as witnesses or who may be in the appeal are likely to be there. So insofar as that one is concerned, I'm sure they likely just issue a public censure in terms of how people should behave. I think the most serious issue is how they are going to deal with the issue of the step aside.
Are you expecting anything significant coming out of this weekend, given how divisive this issue seems to have been, the step aside matter that is?
I'm not expecting that much. I think that, there are two things that are happening. The first one is that those of us who are outside of the ANC seem to have views of what the ANC should do, and then we try and impose those from outside, and then they become the public narrative. And when nothing happens, we then say, well, the ANC is not acting. Secondly, is that the ANC itself tries to mobilize the public into its own factional battles, instead of going into their own structures, discuss these issues, come out and inform the public, including their own members, on the decision that they've made. So, no, I'm not expecting that much beyond what they have said in the future. They will still come out, say we had a great debate, we emerged united, there are other issues that we're going to follow, and they will be more open when they talk about education, health, COVID, but you'll find that when it comes to internal matters, they are going to be really very coy, because until they implement some of those decisions they took in Polokwane, in Mangaung, in Nasrec, that deals with a renewal of the ANC in terms of the role of membership, they're going nowhere very slowly.
To what end are these conflicts that are emerging out of the ANC, Mr. Shilowa? Because one of the other things that we're seeing is that now also circulating will be different posters suggesting different slates of what the next election is going to produce in terms of leadership structures of the ANC. Earlier on this week, in a conversation with Barbara Hogan, she described a titanic fight that is taking place within the organization. Your own view of this party and what's happening there right now?
I think obviously, people get worried about what is happening inside the ANC because it is the ruling party. But frankly, I think as South Africans, we need to allow the ANC space to deal with its own issue, judge it as people sitting outside, in the same way we judge the EFF, the DA, COPE, UDM and others, and then just decide as we go to the ballot, are the things that they said they are going to do, whether it's dealing with fraud, corruption, maladministration, issues of what happens with COVID, and then judge them on those, rather than a view that says, well, we have to try and help the ANC. Mm-hmm. So Barbara is right. She is part of the ANC. She has to be involved in those battles. Same with Joel, Derek, and others. But I think it's unfair for them to try and mobilize South Africans and say it's in defense of democracy when they know that it's really about one faction trying to want to overpower the other, and that sometimes they've not taken action when they're supposed to take action, and therefore try and make it an issue of democracy and the Constitution, when it may have very little to do with that. Obviously, that President Zuma, former president, defies the court and all of that, that's very important, but that's a legal issue which is being dealt with elsewhere. To an extent that people think as ANC members, he's defying ANC decisions, they must deal with him rather than try and mobilize us into their own internal fights.
Former Gauteng Premier Mbazima Shilowa, let's leave it there for today. Thank you so much for your time.